Hello, everyone. My name's Will. Welcome to the Taco Podcast. So today, I'm going to break 10 of the most common myths behind what is autism. So let's go ahead and jump into it today. Thank you for joining me today. So number one, autism is a disease. Is a myth that a lot of people believe that autism is a disease and can be cured with medication, correct diet, or both. But it's not. Autism is not a disease, ladies and gentlemen. It is a disorder, a neurodevelopmental disorder. It's a communications issue, is how it's most likely expressed. Now, I want you to think of, for all 10 of these today, I want you to think of a gas gauge in your car. This is empty. This is full. Okay? A child or an adult who has autism can have issues here, here, and here, or just here and here, and maybe nowhere in between. There is no levels. All right, like you hear a lot of people say, well, in regards to, he has pancreatic cancer. It's level 2, or this person has, this, and it's level 4. There are no levels when it comes to autism. Autism is a spectrum, and the individual, the child, or the adult may be anywhere on that actual spectrum. They could be here in everything, or they could be here on everything, or here, or anywhere in between. But it's not a disease. Likewise, on the same time, when it comes to someone, a huge myth behind that, because it's a disease, and people think it's a disease, is that they can't live independently or live a full life or a fruitful life, and that they're going to die sooner than others. That's absolutely untrue. Those who are on the spectrum can live a full life. They can love, they can have families, they can have long-term employment, they can have happiness. They just don't have the ability to express their emotions, and how they're thinking in a way that is considered normal. And really, in this day and age, ladies and gentlemen, what in the hell is normal anymore? So, going on to number 2. Vaccines cause autism. This is by far, and I hate to say it, ladies and gentlemen, this is by far one of the dumbest ones that I have seen on the internet. It has been spread like wildfire, and there have been certain celebrities out there from, Hollywood, and there have been certain people out there who, or in other forms of media where the camera has been shined upon them, and where they believe that they can cure their child or another adult with massive doses of vitamin C, and that they got autism because they got a vaccine. It's not true. Vaccines do not cause autism. Now, here is the uneducated belief and where that actual belief comes from. A child normally is not diagnosed with autism until around the age of 4. That's the average. But what happens before that age of 4? They get their vaccines. So they're not able to express, or anything else, to have the expressions of a normal child yet, until they get to maybe the age of 2, they start to express it. But they've already had some vaccines before then. So people made the connection, completely foolishly have made the connection, that vaccines cause autism, or the mercury in these shots caused autism. There has never been one connection, not even one connection, between a vaccine and the cause of autism. Not even one. The mercury that is, that used to be in shots isn't there anymore, and we're still seeing the same amount of people diagnosed with autism today than we were, in the 80s and 90s when mercury was actually in certain shots. And the mercury is in there is not the same mercury like you would find in a thermometer. That's where a lot of people think, when they think of mercury, they think of, the old school thermometer. They think of mercury like that. It's not the same type of mercury. But autism is not caused by vaccinations. No, no, autism is not becoming an epidemic. There are, yes, definitely more people who are being diagnosed as adults, teenagers, and children today of autism, because for a lot of years, ladies and gentlemen, to boiling it down to, the nitty gritty here, people didn't bother to even look to see if that child had autism. They may have, labeled them as developmentally disabled. They may have, labeled them as a wallflower or eclectic, or these are other things that people use to give a definition to someone why they're not like others. When it turns out that when you look back on their life, it turns out that they're autistic. And there's nothing wrong with being on the spectrum disorder. It's a disorder, just like you and me or anybody else out here who doesn't have it. They're just like us. They feel the same, they believe the same, they have the same goals, the same wishes, the same desires as everybody else. They just can't express it. Again, I can't stress this enough. It's a neurodevelopmental issue. Everyone who is on the spectrum has a savant skill. No, no, it's not true. True, there are people who are on the spectrum who they used to call, have a different label for, which I won't use, who they have savant skills. But when you take savant skills and you look at the spectrum disorder, it actually comes to less than 10% greater ability or likelihood of a greater ability of someone who has autism, that they may have a savant skill. Not every child or adult with autism can listen to a piece of music and then be able to play it perfectly after hearing it for the first time. They can't all paint the next Mona Lisa the day that they get their first set of finger paints. These are less than a 10% chance that anyone within the greater than the average public out there will have a savant skill. True, there are some very well documented cases though of those who have or on the spectrum who have savant skills, but no, they all do not have savant skills. Number 5, children and adults who are on the spectrum are unable to feel a full range of emotions: love, hate, confusion, mental health issues. They're not able to actually feel or be able to express that. That's extremely hurtful. And I have to believe that this question comes from a perspective of those who just don't know. Those who are on the spectrum feel every single emotion, every single confusion, they deal with the same things that you and I and everybody else out here does. Maybe they just learn in a different way. Maybe they lack the ability to be able to express the emotions that they're feeling. Or maybe, and they are feeling their emotions in an additional heightened sense. When they're confused, they're really confused. When they're sad, they're really sad. When they're happy, they're really happy. And when they're in love, they're really in love. They have the same emotions as every other human being out here on earth. Maybe they lack the ability to be able to express it. Maybe they lack the ability to be able to fully, express themselves to you and to me and to other people out here. But they feel the same exact emotions that you and I do. They are just like us. The only people I know in this entire world who lack the ability to have all range of emotions are sociopaths and psychopaths. And those who are on the spectrum are neither. They just have a neurodevelopmental issue that is holding them back from being able to learn and express. And as time goes on into adulthood, if with the correct environment and the right education, they can express this. But they must be given these additional tools. And then, even then, once they've learned and had the additional tools, they may never be able to express it to you completely or to anyone else. But yes, they feel all emotions. Number 6, those who are autistic are not intelligent, that they have no ability to learn, and they are always going to be the weaker, less intelligent members of society. That hurts. That hurts immensely, because I know a lot of people, a lot of adults, and a lot of children with autism who are on the spectrum. And every one of them is just as bright, if not brighter, than the general public out there. In some aspects, they know more about the world that is going on around them today than adults who, well, think they know what's going on. But when it comes to those who are actually on the spectrum itself, no, that's absolutely not true. True, there are those who are on the spectrum who may have other, disabilities on top of it, just like there are people who are not autistic who have disabilities, either physical or mental disabilities or learning disabilities. But, there are people within the spectrum who may have them as well. But absolutely untrue for number 6, that a child or an adult or somebody who has autism is unable to learn. A child diagnosed with autism can outgrow autism with the proper diet and medication. Ooh, boy. And the answer is no, they cannot. You cannot outgrow autism. There has never been anyone who, outgrew a disability, especially a neurodevelopment disability. You can't wish autism away. Although there are certain adults out there on the spectrum and children out there and teenagers out there who have wished and tried to wish away autism. But what makes you unique, makes you special, and makes you valued and should be valued more. But you can't outgrow autism. If you have autism and you have been diagnosed with autism, again, by a professional who, specializes in neurodevelopmental issues, you can't outgrow autism. There's never been a child who's grown up and has gone on to higher education because they cannot do or handle the stress work of a higher education. Absolutely, positively untrue. I want you to look at the field of science, mathematics, and engineering for just a second. Think about those 3 individual fields: mathematics, science, and engineering. A study that was completed, and that took almost 7 years to complete, that was completed in 2007, found that of those professionals who had been in those fields of mathematics, science, and engineering, had a greater than 40% chance that they were on the spectrum at some point, somewhere, either lower end or higher end of the spectrum. When it comes to a child and being able to, being diagnosed with autism and that they're not able to go on higher education. It's not true. A lot of children with, who are on the spectrum, just, neurodevelopmental spectrum, go on to a higher education. There are a lot of them out there who succeed in the trades and are making six figures a year, more money than you're making per year, more money than I am making per year. They live happy lives. They have homes. They have children. They have families. They care for each other. They drive cars. They fly airplanes. They can do everything out there. Just because they're on the spectrum does not mean that it's a barrier to happiness or to a fruitful life or to an education. Bad parenting is one of the possible causes of autism. This comes from a myth that started in the 1950s and then progressed into the 60s and really caught some traction in the early part of the 1970s. They used to call a certain population refrigerator kids. And it was about children, you may have heard other things like latchkey kids, but they give these terms to children who don't have, a parent who's there during their development, years, and that maybe the parent wasn't as close as emotionally as it could have been when they were a child. And that's where the term, and the idea came from, that bad parenting caused autism. It's not true. There's never been any bad parent out there. I mean, absolutely awful parents out there who've abused their children in multiple different ways, but yet it didn't cause autism. If the child had autism, he was born or she was born with autism. Again, vaccines don't cause it. Bad parenting don't cause it. And I got a bonus one for you. Drugs and alcohol during the pregnancy, before the child is born, does not cause autism. I see it all the time. And this question came up a lot, especially when I asked people for what what they wanted to know about autism the most. That children who are autistic or adults who are autistic are more violent than others in society. It's not true. There has never been one study that has ever found a connection between violent crime and those who are actually autistic or on the spectrum. True, just like in any other portion or part of society out there, there are those who are on the spectrum who have committed some horrific crimes. Then again, and at the same time, there are people out there who are not on the spectrum who have caused great harm and have committed some horrific crimes. Likewise, I got the question: has there ever been a serial killer who had autism? And the answer to that is not one that has ever been diagnosed by a neurodevelopmental, someone who specializes in neurodevelopmental disabilities or disorders. Not one. Not a single serial killer has ever been diagnosed with autism. There are some that you can clearly see are possibly on the spectrum, like Ed Gein, Jeffrey Dahmer, and John Wayne Gacy, and Ted Bundy most likely had some form of a spectrum disorder. But they've never, not one of them, has ever been formally diagnosed with having autism. Again, look at all of those men that I just listed off that were serial killers. Every one of them lived a full and fruitful life. They just went in the wrong direction, and decided to kill people. But they all had jobs. They all drove. They all had their own independent lives, and they could have turned their lives into a happy, successful, fruitful adventure, but they didn't because of another reason. They had nothing to do with being on the spectrum or possibly being on the spectrum. So number 10, again, no child on the spectrum has a more of a likelihood of being violent than those who are not. Violent tendencies come from all over the place. And yes, a lot of times violent tendencies in the way that, a child becomes violent is because of they're taught that way. It's by an example. They see somebody else in their life, stepdad or dad beats mom. All right, they see that growing up, I'm gonna beat women when I get older. It was acceptable then. It just keeps the cycle going. But it's not because they have, they're on the spectrum. So those are 10 myths that I found that a lot of people had questions about. Give you a little insight from my life and from my son's. My son is just like any other child out there. He has the same desires and skills and dislikes, as any other 6-year-old. True, my son is on the spectrum. He has been formally diagnosed by a neurodevelopmental, specialist, a psychotherapist who actually specializes in, autism. My son cannot express in a meaningful way what he's feeling, what he's thinking, or where and what he wants to do next. Does it make him not as smart as other kids? No. Nor does he have a savant skill. He can't play the piano. He can't play a musical instrument at all unless it's a drum, and, well, he just beats the crap out of it because that's what, pound, 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 because kids do. I mean, my son obviously picks up some things a lot faster than other kids his age. He's picked up, electronic devices, and he's found a way with electronic devices to be able to communicate with the world. It's filling the gap. He can't verbalize how he's feeling, but with an electronic device that actually says the word that he's thinking, he can spell it out and the device can speak for him. Of course, also on the same time, though, he's found ways to backdoor, and get into devices that are not supposed to have the internet and actually, activate them. He did this at school. They have a bunch of tablets that are not supposed to be, accessible to the internet. He found a way to going in through the computer somehow, and he was able to find that there was a built-in Wi-Fi connection in the device. And he found an open Wi-Fi network that a teacher hadn't secured from their own personal device, and he was able to get onto the internet with the tablets. Does that make him a savant? No. Does it make him not as smart as other children? No. He's just as devious as any other 6-year-old. A lot of people don't understand autism, are unable to love, cry, or feel emotions. It's not true. My son, if he falls and scrapes his knee, he bleeds just the same as any other child. When he's happy just like any other child. His favorite cartoon or favorite person who comes into the room makes him smile and giggle just like any other child. He likes things that are funny. He doesn't like things that are sad. And he doesn't like broccoli. If you take one thing away in the closing of this video today, I want you to understand this. Just like my friend Gemma, there are adults out there with autism who live very successful lives. They're happy. They have friends. They fall in love. They hurt. They skin their knees. They bleed, just like me and you. If autism is one thing, it's one thing that is a positive, because I've never met somebody who has autism that didn't have a heart of gold, that didn't want the world to just accept them as an equal, not as someone special, but as an equal. And that's what you need to understand about autism or any other neurodevelopmental issue out there. They just want to live the best life they can. So please, stop trying to put people into a box and label them and saying, or trying to figure out what makes them not as equal as you. Instead, start thinking of those who have neurodevelopmental issues as something that where you and I need to have a little more understanding, but understand that they're just like me and you. If anything else, they're better than us. You could learn a lot from somebody who has autism. Watch them. Put yourself in their shoes for just a day. Walk a mile in their shoes. If you don't understand exactly how hard this world is and how cruel this world can be to someone who's just slightly different, you got to take those blinders off. Thank you for joining me today.